care. We treat our older people at the moment like dogs. It's a disgrace. We shouldn't do that.
But, excuse
we should
me,
be investing and putting the money in the primary care
Would you
services.
reverse the cuts on corporation tax?
I think that the cuts on corporation tax are missing the point because we need that money. We need that money at the moment.
Would you reverse it?
Hold on. Inheritance tax.
Would you reverse them?
I think that at the moment, cutting at a time where we need those services and people need those services is the wrong decision.
Angela Rayner, Labour's deputy leader, sat across from Rayner-Neil, a journalist whose reputation for slicing through political rhetoric precedes him. It was meant to be a routine interview, a chance for Rayner to champion Labour's vision for Britain's future. Instead, it became a moment that would ripple across social media, newsrooms and living rooms, leaving viewers stunned and Rayner visibly shaken. The exchange wasn't just a clash of personalities. It tapped into a deeper public unease about trust, competence and the fragile state of Britain's political landscape in 2025.
It is true. At the same time that you've told the people in this country over the last 6 years, we've got to cut our coffee. No, let me finish this point because you've interrupted me and I want to make this point. It's really serious to people in this country that you've told people we've got to live within our means. We've got to have this austerity. We've got to cut. You've cut. And do you know what? Debt's rising and the amount of money that's going into the economy, you know, you've not made it better. Our economy is worse as a result of 6 years of austerity. And now you're saying all of a sudden we
Neil zeroed in on Labour's economic policies, particularly their stance on taxation, corporation tax, inheritance tax, capital gains tax. These weren't abstract issues, they were the nuts and bolts of how a government funds its promises. When Neil pressed Rayner on whether Labour would reverse certain tax cuts, her responses were vague, almost evasive. She leaned on broad statements about priorities, but specifics seemed to elude her. For viewers, it wasn't just a stumble, it was a signal that perhaps Labour's deputy leader wasn't as ready as she appeared. Britain in 2025 is a nation grappling with an ageing population, a housing crisis, and economic pressures that demand clear answers. People are tired of promises that don't add up, and Rayner's struggle to articulate a coherent plan only fueled that frustration. One particularly jarring moment came when Rayner made a claim about conservative tax policies that Neil quickly corrected. It wasn't just a minor error, it was the kind of mistake that makes viewers question whether a politician understands the policies they're critiquing.
So you need to get your policies right. What would the capital gains tax be under a Labour government and how much would that raise compared to now?
But I've told you, Andrew, what our priority is. It's about how we invest in our public services.
No, I'm asking you how you would raise the money. How much money would you recoup?
Cut those taxes.
Excuse me, it's important you ask the questions because you want people's votes. How much extra money would you raise by changing the current corporation tax and capital gains tax structures?
But Andrew, we've talked about in absolute detail about the current tax system, and we've said actually that the money that the decisions that the government have made and the decisions on where they're spending current money is completely inappropriate.
For those who value economic literacy in their leaders, it was a red flag. The exchange wasn't just about Rayner's knowledge, it was about trust. If a senior Labour figure couldn't hold her own on basic economic questions, how could the party be trusted with the nation's finances? The interview didn't stop at taxation. Neil pivoted to Labour's ambitious pledge to build 1.5 million homes, a promise that sounds like a lifeline for a country where housing is increasingly out of reach for young people. On paper, it's a bold vision, but Neil exposed its vulnerabilities. He pressed Rayner on the practicalities. Land shortages, labour deficits, infrastructure demands. Rayner stuck to the headline figures, but her answers felt hollow, as if she hadn't grappled with the real-world barriers.
We've cut 50%. In my constituency, both of my councils have seen over 50% cuts to their budget. No. So all of the people that need support are in acute services now, crippling our NHS.
So you would be able to give them more money by changing the corporation tax and changing the capital gains tax to raise more money.
You don't cut taxes when you need that money to help. You should be investing.
You don't know, do you?
You should be investing
in those
services. No, Andrew, I'm talking about investment with the money we've currently got. At the moment, the government are not investing that money in our communities, in our areas where it's required. They're spending, they're cutting tax for those the richest, and they're spending money in the wrong places.
I'll give you because I'm lost.
Rayner's responses grew increasingly vague, and at times she seemed to contradict Labour's own figures. For viewers, it wasn't just about one politician's performance, it was about the party as a whole. If the deputy leader couldn't articulate a clear vision, what did that say about Labour's readiness to govern? The question lingered long after the cameras stopped rolling. Yet the story wasn't just about Rayner or Labour, it was about the state of political discourse in Britain. Neil's interview style, while brutal, reflected a public hunger for accountability. People are fed up with soundbites and platitudes. They want leaders who can withstand scrutiny. In 2025, that demand is louder than ever. The rise of platforms like X has amplified voices from all sides, creating a digital arena where politicians are judged in real time. Rayner's interview wasn't just a TV moment, it was a social media event, dissected and debated by thousands.
Well, there was an amazing extraordinary campaign led by the parents of pupils that were concerned about the school funding cuts and the head teachers, which was unprecedented actually in the way that they've written to parents and said, you know, we can't afford to provide school books and to carry out the curriculum. So I think they led a tremendous campaign. The government have obviously took heed of that, but of course they've already cut school budgets by 2.8 billion. So those cuts are already happening now. These are cuts that were further planned in.
For Rayner, the interview was a harsh lesson in the perils of unpreparedness. She's not the first politician to falter under pressure, and she won't be the last. But the stakes feel higher now. Britain is at a crossroads, with economic challenges, demographic shifts, and social tensions demanding bold, credible leadership. Labour's vision of fairness, opportunity, and a solution to the housing crisis resonates with many. But visions alone don't win elections. The party needs to show it can deliver, and Rayner's performance raised doubts about whether they're up to the task. In less than a year, the Labour Party's leadership under Keir Starmer has left many Britons feeling betrayed, with policies that seem to prioritise control over prosperity and freedom. Public sentiment, as seen across platforms and in recent polls, paints a picture of a government stumbling out of the gate, alienating voters with decisions that feel out of touch and heavy-handed. From crackdowns on free speech to economic measures that have sparked outrage, Labour's early tenure has been marked by missteps that contrast sharply with the bold, polarising energy of Donald Trump's first 100 days in his second term as US President. While Labour's approach has been criticised as stifling and regressive, Trump's initial moves have been a whirlwind of action, for better or worse, aimed at reshaping America's trajectory. Let's unpack how Labour's policies have faltered and how they stack up against Trump's opening salvo.
I'd like to actually ask the members of Parliament, the present on the panel, what part of democracy they don't actually understand. Parliament had a ballot, did it not, in order to have the referendum. They voted 6-1 to have the ballot. You took that ballot, you took the chance, we had the referendum, you didn't get the answer that you wanted, and now you want to turn it round. I didn't vote for the last government. Can I have a ballot?
Labour's promise of change during the 2024 election resonated with a nation weary of 14 years of Conservative rule. Starmer's landslide victory was meant to herald a new era of fairness and renewal, but within months that hope curdled into disappointment. One of the most contentious issues has been Labour's approach to free speech, which critics argue veers into authoritarian territory. The government's push to police hate speech and online content has raised alarms about overreach. Posts on X highlight fears that Labour is fostering a thought police culture, with policies that could criminalise dissenting opinions under vague definitions of harm. For instance, the College of Policing, a body accused of driving ideological agendas, has been linked to training programmes that prioritise diversity over traditional crime fighting, leading to perceptions that the state is more interested in controlling speech than protecting citizens. This has struck a nerve in a country that values its democratic traditions, with many feeling that Labour is eroding the very freedoms it promised to uphold. Economically, Labour's policies have been labelled draconian by critics, hitting working people and businesses alike. The decision to remove winter fuel payments for millions of pensioners was a gut punch, especially as energy costs remain high. This move, coupled with plans to raise taxes, despite Starmer's pledge not to burden working families, has fuelled accusations of betrayal. YouGov polls from October 2024 show that 66% of Britons believe Labour is mishandling the NHS, and 70% see immigration policy as a failure, with no clear plan to address the small boats crisis. The economy, far from thriving, is described as flatlining, with business confidence dented by what some call a punitive tax regime. These policies have left many Britons, particularly in working-class communities, feeling that Labour's priorities lie with metropolitan elites rather than the heartland. Labour's handling of social issues has also drawn fire. The decision to maintain the two-child benefit cap, despite campaign promises to scrap it, has been slammed as heinous by former allies like Jonathan Ashworth. This policy, seen as keeping children in poverty, has alienated Labour's traditional base. Meanwhile, the government's immigration strategy, scrapping the Conservatives' Rwanda scheme without a robust alternative, has led to chaos, with ex-posts decrying a big boats crisis, and smugglers exploiting the lack of deterrence. Starmer's internal party management hasn't helped. His draconian control, including removing the whip from 7 MPs for voting against the benefit cap, signals intolerance for dissent. The loss of Chief of Staff Sue Gray amid infighting further underscores a government in disarray, with Starmer's approval ratings plummeting to levels rivaling Liz Truss's per UK. Contrast this with Donald Trump's first 100 days in office, which have been nothing short of seismic. Starting in January 2025, Trump hit the ground running with an America First agenda that, while divisive, has energized his base and rattled global markets. His economic policies focus on deregulation and tariffs, aiming to repatriate jobs and boost US manufacturing. The Institute for Government notes that Trump's tariff threats have put pressure on allies like the UK, forcing Labour to scramble for trade strategies. Unlike Labour's cautious, tax-heavy approach, Trump's plan bets on slashing bureaucracy and incentivising private investment, though critics warn of inflationary risks. On free speech, Trump's approach is the polar opposite of Labour's. While Starmer's government tightens the screws on expression, Trump has made academic freedom a cornerstone of his early agenda. His administration's crackdown on woke universities, including cutting $12 billion 0 cents in funding to institutions like Harvard for failing to curb alleged anti-Semitism, has sparked calls in the UK for similar measures. The Daily Mail reports that British taxpayers envy Trump's hardline stance against virtue-signaling diversity programmes, which some see as draining resources from education. Immigration is another area of stark contrast. Labour's Border Security Command, meant to tackle people smuggling, lacks the teeth of Trump's aggressive policies. Trump's promise of mass deportations, though logistically fraught, projects strength to his base, with many celebrating his focus on law and order. The Institute for Government warns that deportations could disrupt US sectors like agriculture, but Trump's rhetoric taps into a populist vein that Labour has failed to address. Starmer's softer stance, including closer EU ties, has left him vulnerable to criticism from Reform UK's Nigel Farage, who echoes Trump's nationalism and threatens Labour's working-class vote. Socially, Trump's first 100 days have been a lightning rod. His withdrawal from the Paris Climate Agreement and push for oil and gas production have emboldened UK net nuno sceptics, who argue Labour's green policies, like those of Ed Miliband, harm consumers. Meanwhile, Labour's Workers' Rights Bill, a rare bright spot, offers protections like unfair dismissal safeguards, but lacks the transformative vision of Trump's Department of Government Efficiency, led by Elon Musk, which aims to slash federal waste. While Labour's reforms are incremental, Trump's are revolutionary, for better or worse, with ex-posts hyping his war on the deep state.
I welcome in the Right Honourable Lady to her place, and can I wish her luck for her leadership campaign now she's confirmed she's running.
The best of luck.
So it was her ambition all along to be leader of the opposition, not mine. I must say, the Honourable Lady seems to be taking to opposition very naturally. I think she'll find herself comfortable for a long, long time on those benches. I mean, the Right Honourable Lady had a lot to say in her response, and I'll come to the substance of it in a moment.
Public sentiment in Britain reflects growing disillusionment with Labour. Only 28% of Britons, per YouGov, think it's reasonable to expect progress in 100 days. But even Labour voters are disappointed, with 50% feeling let down. Starmer's freebie scandal, accepting over £100 sterling 0 pence in gifts, has further eroded trust, with Al Jazeera calling his start the worst in living memory. Trump, by contrast, thrives on controversy, turning legal battles and media clashes into rallying cries. His foreign policy, including reduced support for Ukraine, forces Labour to rethink its transatlantic strategy, with the Institute for Government urging a coordinated response. In essence, Labour's early failures stem from a disconnect between promises and delivery, compounded by policies that feel punitive and controlling. Starmer's government seems to govern from a place of caution, alienating both the left and the right. Trump, love him or hate him, governs with audacity, reshaping America's domestic and global role in ways that resonate with populists worldwide. While Labour's crackdowns on speech and economic missteps have left Britons questioning their choice, Trump's first 100 days have set a confrontational tone that, for now, overshadows Starmer's faltering start. The question is whether Angela Rayner and the Labour Party can find their footing before the populist wave, inspired by Trump and Farage, sweeps them away. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like, share and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more updates. Stay tuned.